Welcome back, everyone, to High Plains History. I'm joined with a very special guest today. So why don't you introduce yourself to the people that are out here watching High Plains History?
Okay, Amy von Lintel. My title is Professor of Art History at West Texas A&M University.
And so today we're talking about kind of a very special person here in Amarillo that people may know their buildings but may not know the person. So talk to me a little bit about, we're talking about Guy Carlander.
Right,
And
right.
so people who may have walked into his buildings but may not know Guy Carlander.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about Guy Carlander.
Okay, good question. I actually had never heard of him until I moved here. And I wound up living in a neighborhood that he designed, and so I was pretty interested in him. I work a lot on regional art history. I feel like there's lots of stories to be told here, and I think his is one that is worthy of some new attention. I think, you know, he's not a starchitect like Frank Gehry or Frank Lloyd Wright, but he really left a strong and a creative footprint here in Amarillo, but also in the region. And hundreds of buildings, like a lot, things that you would know. Amarillo College, the Courtyard Marriott downtown. I took students the other day out to the Paladura Canyon, and the Lodge building is something that he designed, right? So he's just kind of everywhere, nowhere at the same time. There are some plaques to his name, but I think we could get to know him a little better.
Yeah, well, I actually have a list of some of the buildings that he's designed. So the Country Club District Gate Poles.
Yes.
Posts, the Northwest Texas Hospital.
Yes.
Northwest Texas Hospital School of Nursing.
Yes.
The Panhandle Lumber Company.
Yes.
The Fisk Medical Arts Building.
Yes.
Summit School.
The Fisk Medical Arts is now the Courtyard Marriott.
Yeah. So Summit School.
Yes.
Northwestern Bell Telephone Company.
Yes.
San Jacinto Switch House.
Yes.
First Baptist Church. Like you just mentioned, the Paladura Canyon Lodge over there. Llano Cemetery.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. The Amarillo College Administration Building, Ordway Hall, White Kirk Department Store, Amarillo Hardware Company, which is now our City Hall.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Amarillo College Women's Gymnasium, the Old Tascosa Nightclub in the basement of the Herring Hotel, and Amarillo College and Commerce Building, or Durrett Hall. And these are all according to the Amarillo Historic Building Survey that was done way back in 1985. So it's just, again, we are still using some of these buildings today.
Yeah.
Some of these buildings, again, like we just talked about, are now our City Hall. People have renovated some of the Amarillo College buildings. So talk to me a little bit about these buildings are still standing and we're still using them.
So I think the thing about Carlander is that he builds a functional building, but he also builds a building that has some beauty and aesthetic qualities to it. Not too heavy-handed. They're sort of with a historical bent, but also some modernistic twists that make them not seem so stodgy, and also easy to kind of continue the pattern work. He did a lot of stucco and stone molding work, like details, and those can be replicated pretty easy, and they're continued. So my example for that would be the White and Kirk building that has this really lovely tile work. I think it's concrete cast stone, but it's a yucca plant. And then they reuse that because they have the mold for it, and they reused it for 6-car and crush. The building has it on there. So that idea of like adaptability and usability, functionality, and also quality, something that makes your eyes pleased to look at. The other thing I'll say about him that he does need some more attention is his drawings and blueprints. We have archives where we can really learn all the hand drawing that went into it, because when he was an architect, they didn't have CAD, right? Like he was doing everything by hand. We still have all that.
And so I think another cool thing is when you go by Amarillo College, you have like some of the baseball players that are on the gymnasium, and then the gnomes that are on the building.
Yep.
I think those are very interesting details that he also put into buildings that were kind of very unique, that he put attention to detail into certain buildings that he was doing. So what does it mean for him to be like, you know, this is a building for a gym, so let me put a little bit of a thing on there to be like, oh, this is a gymnasium, so let's put a baseball player or a basketball player. What does that mean for people to put, or have him put a little bit of a touch like that on there?
Right, like poetics. I think of it as a little bit of poetics, because I mean, a building is going to be pretty rectilinear and bare bones unless you add some humanness or some storytelling aspects to it. And I think he's good at both. And so those little gnomes or the baseball players or whatever, he's adding a touch that gives people something to pause and look at and talk about and take a picture with even to this day. He does a great job of that. The other building I think that they did add on to and kept his design elements is Margaret Wells Elementary School, and that's also in the country club neighborhood that you mentioned with the gatepost. But yeah, what the wing that they added on, they kept with his details, and it's not that hard to keep that. And so it's like, you know, we could just wreck that building and build a brand new school, but why, with this kind of quality, people have really invested in the preservation of his buildings.
And I know City Hall, they try to keep that same kind of look too. When they redid it, they went in and try to keep that those bare bones. When you go in City Hall, it's very much of a kind of a bare bones, minimalistic look, but they also try to keep that same kind of style.
Right.
So how important is it to, like you were saying, to keep that look and that style when you're kind of going in and maybe remodeling?
I mean, as an art historian, I'm going to tell you it's important, but it costs money, right? But I think it's a really good investment. And one of the things about Carlander is that the Amarillo Hardware building that is now the City Hall was a streamlined, modern, a kind of 1930s, a little bit more like the Airstream trailer look. But he did buildings like the First Baptist Church that almost look Neo-Byzantine, right? With all of this beautiful like tiling details, and almost looks like lace. And so he has this wide variety of the kinds of designs that he's doing. And so for a City Hall, the very streamlined, like you said, minimalistic looks great, works well. But for a church, you can also see that kind of like beauty detailing of the different styles. He did schools, lots of schools. You mentioned Summit. He did schools all through the region. And a school has to be pretty, pretty functional and not spend too much money. But the little details that he did, like maybe a column will have a top to it, kind of like the Ordway Hall has those interesting, I don't know what it looks like. It's non-classical, right? It's not your traditional Greek column, but it's still this kind of column form where it's not just a bare bones facade. It has detailing to give your eyes pause or to kind of allow an aesthetic thing to resonate. And he does that really well in all different kinds of functional buildings and houses. He even builds houses, right?
Yeah. There's several houses around here that he designed.
Absolutely. And each of them have these details. I'm trying to define, I'm writing a book on him, I'm trying to define his style, and it's hard because he doesn't stick to one thing. Yeah. And a lot of times an architect that's said to be eclectic is kind of derided. They seem like, well, they can't stick to one thing, they're not good. But I think that with him, I think he's very good. I think he's experimental. I think he's creative. I think he's playful. And I think he's really like functional. He gets the job done. He wasn't even trained as an architect. He was trained doing work for the Santa Fe Railroad and civil engineering work during World War I. And at that time, you didn't have to be fully trained as an architect to get a license, and licensing didn't start till 1937. And so he just showed up in Amarillo in 1920 with a lot of real world experience. I'm an architect, architectural firm open, and the Borger boom hit, and everybody wanted to build something, and he was right there at the right time. So I think he, proved himself, but it was a different time for like the qualifications of an architect. So I find all this really interesting.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is, of course, he designed Ordway Hall, which is originally was Amarillo College. So it's kind of cool that he also kind of designed what Amarillo College would look like kind of going forward.
Right.
How interesting is that he set the template of what Amarillo College would look like, and then they kind of would base other designs of Amarillo College kind of on what he designed.
Right, so it's like you said, adaptability or functionality with beauty to it, but it's not that hard. It's not so specific. Like if you have a Frank Gehry building that's so unique, you can't just add on to it. You have to keep exactly the same. But with this, he has a lot of freedom and fluidity that you can add to functionally with keeping the same flavor. But the flavor for each building fits the building really well. Like that's another thing he's good at. He's good at a commission job, right? Somebody comes in and says, make me a school or make me a house or make me a church. He's like, okay, I got ideas. And this is what Frank Lloyd Wright would do, right? Like he had kind of some ideas in his head, but the person that was commissioning the house, like Falling Water, build me a house on a waterfall, got it. And it only takes him like a little bit of time to do it because he's so good. I think you could compare Carlander to that because he was so prolific. He got all those jobs done. The buildings are still standing. They're still being renovated and used. I mean, what's the success of an architect, right? Is it that a million books are written about him? Okay, maybe. I think Carlander deserves some attention.
Yeah. And then we talk about Powder Canyon as well, and the lodge out there. It's very different from anything else that he has as well. But it fits well with Powder Canyon. It
Right.
fits with the nature out there. It fits with all of that. So it's, again, very much adaptable to
Yeah.
Powder Canyon.
Like site-specific.
Yeah, site-specific, yeah.
Absolutely. And he was, one of the things about the lodge is when you go into his archives, you can see that he planned to expand it, and it was supposed to have this huge chimney-like thing almost mirroring the lighthouse, which would have been really weird out there, right? But it never got built because it was the Depression and, so just the main part of the lodge was built. But he did build it with what looks like native stone, and it fits into the side of the cliff. And when you're looking out the windows, that's that beautiful view. He built it so the rocks sort of shape your view. I mean, it's really smart stuff. And that would be also like Frank Lloyd Wright or some of these other architects that are very site-specific. And he loved the Palo Canyon. He was involved with making it a state park, right? So he was one of these people. He wasn't from here. He's from Kansas. I'm also from Kansas, right? So he was a transplant, but committed to this area so much and saw that as a natural wonder, and he worked hard with a committee of people and a group of people to get that state park founded. So yes, there's a building there that he built, but it was more than that. He did a lot of background labor to get that park founded.
And I was going to talk to you about that expansion, because we've talked before about him wanting to expand that and do that. So, and I think you've shown me a drawing of that expansion. So how unique would that have been to do that expansion?
I don't know. We were just out there with students, WT students, that were doing a Art of this Region class, and that's what I asked them. I was like, how would this look? And one of the things we looked at was a tower in the Grand Canyon that was by a woman architect, oh gosh, Mary Coulter. And she used, again, kind of native stone and made it look like a ruin, and that's what it would have looked like. And so could we imagine the Mary Coulter Tower in Palo Canyon? Well, maybe. But I also think our canyon is kind of like, it goes down, it's flat land and then kind of goes down. And so sticking up like that might have been really disturbing. So I don't know. Maybe we're glad it didn't get built. But he had a lot of big ideas that never got built. And he wasn't afraid to just keep designing and designing. I mean, so did Frank Lloyd Wright. He had this like tower that had a landing pad for a helicopter and all this stuff, and never got built, right? But when you're that creative, you just keep creating, and some projects hit and some don't. But what's nice about the archive is because you could see some things that didn't actually get built that are super interesting. Like he wanted to turn downtown into multiple high-rise parking garages because they had this idea in the 60s that it would be, the next big city between, I don't know, Chicago and LA or something, right? Really big kind of Southwest hub. And they thought cars were going to just take over. And so he has all this car design that never got built. But the newspapers were featuring it, and I think there was all this hope. And I also think one of the reasons that didn't happen is because the Air Force Base closed. So a lot happened where Amarillo was on the upswing, and then it kind of dwindled, and he never quit. Not everything got built.
Yeah, I was going to touch with you on that too. As you were telling me about a design about, kind of, he was thinking car forward with these designs and stuff like that. So very interesting that he was, kind of thinking towards the future of where, innovation was going and where the city was going and everything like that. He wasn't just thinking about the now, but thinking of the future.
Well, and there's this wonderful design. He always designed Christmas cards and sent them out, and he did them like on his blueprint machine. And one of them is like 1929, right before stock market hits, like things are not quite into the Depression, and he has all these hopes for the next year, and he writes them out and draws them out and everything, and you're going, he couldn't have known, so that idea of future focused, he was always future focused, but he was a realist too. I mean, I think he'd just pick up and keep going. But yeah, he had big dreams, and I think those dreams are worth noting even if they don't exist in like brick and mortar. I think he's somebody who can inspire us to keep dreaming big for this place.
And so, you talk about his archives. Where are those archives located? Are they located at WT?
Yeah, in Panhandle Plains Historical Museum, which of course is now closed. So, I mean, I don't think the public can make an appointment to get into the archive, but they might work with you, I've done research in that archive over the last 10 years plus, and so I've collected a lot, but I still need to get back in there. And then there's also a wonderful archive at Amarillo Public Library. So both of those are holding his drawings and letters, and there's even recommendation letters from him, like when he was in the military or working for the railroad. So you can really learn what his mentors thought of him, you know, sort of biographical details that are super interesting. Yeah, those archives are rich and full, and you know, even his notebooks are in there, all kinds of stuff.
And so what does it mean to have these archives at the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum or the public library so people can access and look at what he was drawing or see his original drawings for certain places that, again, that exist around the city?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean for people to be like, hey, you know, I'm an inspiring architect, or I'm you know, I'm
absolutely.
somebody who wants to get into this, so I should really check these out.
Well, I mean, I can speak from experience taking my students in there. They love the background stuff. They love to go out and see the building, but then look at the drawings that led up to Ordway Hall. And so I would imagine that anybody who discovers those drawings, I think one of the things about like works on paper or archival stuff is that it's that much closer to the human that made it. You know, like you can get an intimate view where you can't take in the whole building at once. So, you know, and photographs, that kind of like photographic evidence of stuff that isn't extant. I think for me, that's why I became a historian, not because of the buildings, but because of the archive. I just love archives, but you have to want to get in there and do the treasure hunt. It's kind of tedious, it can be, but my students really, really love it, especially because, you know, at the Amarillo Public Library, for example, they have drawers where you pull out the drawer and there's a big old drawing by him, and so it's this discovery. It's not hanging on the wall. There is a beautiful one hanging on the wall in their offices too, but the idea of like, look at this, and you pull it out, and it's a treasure that is like unfolding itself right in front of you. And then because they're not super precious, the students can like handle it or get close to it, you know, really have a one-on-one experience with the object. And so, yeah, it's like material culture telling you about this person or about Amarillo's history. And yeah, that's absolutely why I became an art historian, because that's the way I like to tell the story.
And so for these students and for you personally, being an art historian and to share these type of things with your students, I mean, how important is it for you to do that, for you to share what you've learned through Carlander or just other things? What does it mean for you to share that stuff?
I was taught that way. I went to undergraduate as an art history major at the University of Kansas, and we would spend time in Spencer Art Museum and the Spencer Research Library. And so I was always taught that you're going to go and look at the thing together and talk about it and turn the pages and, you know, stick your nose in a book or a piece of old paper or something. So it just always made sense to me. But the students too, I mean, today they're very much connected to screens and screen it culture, but they also hunger for something else. So yeah, we can sit in a classroom, we can look at the Mona Lisa on a screen, but when you get out and look at it behind the scenes in an archive, it's a thing that has material, like tangibility that reacts to your body differently. It's not just visual, it's like bodily. And then also in every archive, there's an archivist or a curator or somebody else's voice besides mine teaching them. And the students can learn different fields that they might go into. I mean, it's like, it's a no-brainer, but it's so many levels of importance. I think it's professionalism, it's training them, you know, in new realms besides just this sterile classroom, and, you know, learning about things from a material and in-person perspective. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I do it all the time, as many times as I can. We're always taking field trips, site visits, whatever. But again, that's how I was trained, so.
And what about, especially for students who have grown up here and who go, okay, I've gone into, you know, the
museum.
Yeah, the museum or something like that, or one of Carlander's buildings all the time, and then to see, okay, I've walked into Ordway Hall 100 times,
Right.
and then to go, okay, now I'm seeing the blueprint, now I'm seeing his drawings of that building. What does it mean for somebody like that?
Right, it enriches their experience, it gives them context. The story gets so many more layers. One of the things the students love is a behind-the-scenes tour, right? Not everyone gets that. And both at Panhandle Plains and at the public library, everywhere I take them, somebody lets us into the vault or lets us see, you know, how things are stored. And they learn, how does that blueprint live day to day, and why do you preserve it that way? You know, it's not just thrown in a corner. So learning about how not only to appreciate, but to preserve and to conserve things that are part of our history. Yeah, I mean, I think that they just love it. It really isn't a hard sell. And it's also like fun to get out of the classroom because sitting in a chair and like looking at a screen, whatever. But yeah, no, it makes my teaching easy because then I have friends that I get to teach with and our expertise comes together and it's not just my voice, and I love that. But every time we go, that's the thing the students write on their evals that they really love, those site visits, those behind the scenes tours, the getting into the details of what you can't just walk into and find on the street. You have to like get in behind stuff.
And so I guess for people who, again, who may not know Carlander, or like I said, who have gone to these buildings 100 times, what would you tell them to be able to learn more about him, or to be able to learn more about him and the things he's, again, done here in Amarillo?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of even digital archives that you can look at. Like the Amarillo Public Library has digitized wonderful photos that you can look at all of his buildings, and you can look at the photo of as it's being built, So like I was looking at Margaret Will's, and it was when there were no trees yet, and it was all dirt, but it was like in process. So, there's access to things like that. But the thing that I think that makes it hard to study Carlander is there's not just some great biography out there. His nephew, I believe it was, Kenneth, wrote a small biography but self-published, and it's in the archive, but it's not something you can just like go Google Books or whatever. It's not out there to buy on Amazon. And so that's one of the reasons that this project is important. But I also think, local historians like Wes Reeves, there's people writing about Carlander almost constantly, but it's more blog format or in, kind of like in Brick and Elm magazine. There's so many ways to get at him, but there's not enough, is what I'm saying. I think it could be better where we have like, a better clearinghouse of what materials we have in those archives. Both of the archives aren't fully digitized. Or a book that could tell us, his biography is pretty interesting and it hasn't been fully traced. So I'm not saying I'm the perfect person to do that, but I have been working on this for a while. I hope I can pull it off. But yeah, I think he deserves a monograph and or a pretty dang good website, or digital humanities learning experience, something like that. Now, I don't think someone in New York City is really going to get into Guy Carlander, but that's not a reason not to do it. I think in this area, everybody from like a school child that's growing up and studying in one of his buildings to somebody working at City Hall might want to know why their building looks like that or why it was preserved the way it was. And so having access to that, I think, would be really good.
And so is it important for somebody at City Hall to maybe say that, they do a tour at City Hall or something like that, be like, hey, this building was, designed by Guy Carlander, and maybe start sharing the history more of Guy Carlander and his impact maybe here in the city?
I think what we could do is a Guy Carlander tour or something like that, because I think someone at City Hall would also like to know that the same guy built the Fisk building, which is now Courtyard Marriott, or the same guy did Ordway Hall, right? So it's not like this isolated experience is only the City Hall, but he's so everywhere, and to start connecting. Oh, I grew up in Vernon. Did you know the City Hall in Vernon is also about what? So that kind of like panhandle experience, I think you could teach a lot about the region through Carlander and teach a lot about Carlander through the region.
Yeah, absolutely. We enjoy having you on and sharing about Guy Carlander. Again, when we talked before about him and we were doing the New Deal stuff, and you're just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Guy Carlander. So.
Yeah, sometimes I don't trust my memory fully, but he's been somebody that's been on my radar since the minute I got here, just because like you said, the details of those buildings just talk to you. Like the Courtyard Marriott has those little blue gargoyle looking guys. It's like it's like Guy Carlander's presence is still so here humanly, not just like in a book or in an archive, but like he's really present in the city. And I just think, I don't know, I want to get to know him better.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to High Plains History.